Hello, welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's having a wonderful day. I've brought you guys a new wonderful video, so let's dive straight into it. Generation Zero is a game where you're a sole survivor in a region in Sweden, completely overrun by hostile robots. The game's main feature is mainly around you killing the enemy AI and finding out what happened to the previous residents that survived there, along with a couple of other notable characters, such as a couple like AI here and there. However, this game later disappeared mid 2020 or 2021. Not many people actually know about it that I know of. If you do, please do let me know in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. However, this game kind of went under the radar, even though it has so many interesting game mechanics. It has about 32 weapons total, has a very in-depth story of about 52 main story missions, I think. I'll double check that. And it's stealth mainly. Anyone who's played the game can confirm it's more of a stealth-based shooter. However, that's not what I'm here to talk about today. This game has kind of disappeared and was kind of forgotten. I'm gonna list off some couple reasons why. So, if you're enjoying the gameplay in the background, I do recommend you do check out Generation Zero if you do enjoy the gameplay in the background. This is all taken from my POV. One major reason why I think Generation Zero flopped and faded into the background of the internet was because on launch day, launch day to launch month, it only sold around 500,000 units. It was predicted to sell just close to 2 million, or maybe just a bit shy of that. But the game heavily underperformed, which set the stage for its downward decline from there. Along with its launch day flop, it was also riddled with performance bugs, and people started to realize the game got a bit repetitive after you've killed the same type of enemy a couple 20 times. This was later fixed in later updates, but obviously its player base was already hurt, wounded, damaged from launch day, that it kinda had similar something like Cyberpunk. However, Avalanche Studios decided to continue on the next game instead of pulling a Cyberpunk, which, if they continued, I would have really loved to see what they could have done with this game. On to the next reason. The second reason on this list is mainly due to story and world building. On launch day, there was no AI and there was barely any actual voice acting, and the story was a bit confusing for new players, which was later fixed with new updates. However, the day one release of new players were confused, abandoned, alone, and got into the repetitive killing cycle of just endlessly and mindlessly killing robots with no sense of direction or any form of compass. It heavily limited the game's lifespan, which would also later help with its downfall and subsequently only having 500 people on monthly, well, from Steam charts. This was a critical flaw that could have easily been fixed if they had, say, had more time. Say, hypothetically, they delayed it by 6 months, they would have easily been able to add in all the extra content that was later added down the line, such as showdown updates, stuff like that. That would have most definitely kept the game alive and running, and hell, probably even alive to this day. On to reason number 3. Reason number 3, gameplay. The gameplay of Generation Zero on paper seems incredibly inclusive, shooting off components of robots and all that, but in actual reality and actual practice, it's more similar to you just pointing and clicking and hoping you hit something, unless you're targeting something like one of the weaker enemies or the bigger ones. When it comes to the medium class enemies, they just really, it's just kind of like as much damage you can get in there, kind of like a Destiny type thing, and it severely limited the game's access for a new player base, especially since a game with no new mechanics is just a reskin of your average Call of Duty or average Battlefield nowadays, which incredibly hurt the game with terms of reviews, like reviews going to say the game has no innovative movement or no innovative gunplay. It was innovative inherently with its world building and heavy emphasis on environmental storytelling. That definitely cannot be like changed in any form of way, but the actual gameplay of where you're trying to kill the enemies was repetitive, sluggish, slow, and just its main marketing point of it being a in-depth robot game just kind of its novelty fell off after a while, which severely, as we can see in modern day, severely limited it to a new player base, gaining new players. It, yeah, it was a sad thing. However, they did promise to fix this. For example, the update, which if you know, if you played Generation Zero, if you've seen update Showdown, or yeah, I think it's called Showdown, added in new types of weapons, and they had their own little gimmicks. So one weapon would overheat but do higher damage, one other, so on and so forth. It added its own form of innovative gameplay when it came to guns, effectively. Near the end of its life cycle, it was sad to see, because if they say had Showdown on day one, it would have survived a lot longer. However, this was sadly not the case. Don't get me wrong, Generation Zero is not a bad game. It is extremely good. I highly recommend you go play it. But it did commercially flop, and it flopped to its player base on day one. Nowadays, it pulled a Cyberpunk, but didn't have the publicity or the actual standing power to make that claim good. I hope you guys enjoyed this video of me talking about how Generation Zero was the most forgotten and abandoned game probably of 2020 or 2019. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.